Hello there and welcome to my brand new video discussing the debut of the hotly anticipated new TV show The Mandalorian, which is on Disney Plus right now, which is launching, it's already launched in some territories, it's coming I think early next year in others. Get on that please, Disney. And basically it's a TV show set in the Star Wars universe that follows the Mandalorian. And Mandalorians, for those that don't know, are a type of bounty hunter most commonly associated with Boba Fett from the original Star Wars films. But this is a brand new TV show which follows a separate Mandalorian bounty hunter. It's set a couple of years after Return of the Jedi, and it stars Pedro Pascal as the titular Mandalorian. I was surprised to find the episode just begins. There isn't that classic Star Wars crawl at the beginning. I didn't think there'd be one of those for every episode, but I thought maybe every season would begin with a crawl to, establish the events and where we're set. But no, it just begins. We're on this really icy, desolate planet. It's not hot though. And we see this cantina full of rough locals. Suddenly the doors open up and in steps the Mandalorian. He sees a local alien being hassled by some rough guys, and they quickly turn their attention on him. They try to start a fight with him. He dispatches them easily. It's surprisingly violent, this series. I mean, it's a 12A. There's nothing shocking. It's not Game of Thrones, but it's very gritty for a Star Wars project. And there's even one bit where a guy tries to run away out of the door, and the Mandalorian, hooks him with a kind of rope from his wrist, pulls him through the door and cuts him in half. And I mean, obviously, you don't see any blood or anything, but it's like, wow, that's pretty violent for Star Wars. He goes over to the guy that the locals were harassing, and it turns out this guy is actually his bounty. And the Mandalorian says to him, you can come in alive or cold, and more on that in a bit. While they're trying to get kind of a ride back to his ship, the first ride that pulls up is being piloted by a droid. And it's here that we learn the Mandalorian doesn't trust droids. We don't know why. I'm sure that will come into play later, but it's made clear that he would rather get in this old busted cab than take a ride with a droid. And they go back to his ship, and then suddenly this massive creature bursts out of the ice, and it starts to attack the ship while it's trying to fly off. It's got his claws clamped into it, and so the Mandalorian takes out his rifle that has these prongs on the end and electrocutes it so they can get away. Just a little note for you, this rifle that he uses with those prongs, we've actually seen Boba Fett use a similar rifle in the Star Wars cartoon that he appeared in. On board his ship, his bounty kind of tries to play nice and, does try to bribe him, says he's got a lot of money if he'll let him go. But the Mandalorian can't be persuaded. He's a true professional. The bounty says he needs to go to the toilet. We see, I think, our first ever toilet in Star Wars on his ship. It doesn't look very glamorous. And then the bounty obviously tries to make a getaway. He's trying to look for an escape. He finds all the Mandalorian's weapons, but he knows better than to try and take on a Mandalorian. And then it's really quite like a bit creepy. Like suddenly the Mandalorian appears behind him, sees he's trying to escape, and throws him into a machine that freezes him into carbonite, a bit like Han Solo. And we see he's on his ship got a collection of bounties of different species that have been frozen in carbonite. So clearly he's been at this for a few years now. The Mandalorian then delivers the contract, and we learn that the Imperial credits are no longer valid. Obviously, the Empire has fallen in recent years following Return of the Jedi, and we can see this is actually having an effect on the galaxy. The kind of inflation is happening, and the Imperial credits aren't worth much anymore. And I think that's interesting how they're going into details of how living in a galaxy would work. They kind of gloss over that in the films, but in this currency and stuff like that is being affected by these events. And in the end he gets his payment and takes on a new contract that's off the books and highly secretive. And the only details he gets is that it's on this planet for a 50-year-old male. And so he takes on the contract and off he goes. to properly get the contract, he has to meet the contractors face to face, and he goes to this kind of rundown bunker where he encounters some stormtroopers who are looking pretty messed up. Their armor's in bad shape. Obviously, given this is after the fall of the Empire, they're kind of on the run now, and we see these guys who clearly used to work for the Empire, are down on their luck and are trying to maintain what power they had. And basically, he gets told this contract is for a 50-year-old male. We see a kind of scientist guy who's very eager to make sure this 50-year-old male is brought in alive rather than dead, but he is given the option to take him in dead if needs be. As a down payment, he gets some Beskar steel, which to Mandalorians, from what I understand, is very rare, very valuable steel that's can be turned into armor and is very resistant to blast fire and stuff. It's very valuable, and he gets that as a down payment, and it has an insignia on it of the Empire's logo, so it looks like the Empire has probably stolen a lot of that from the Mandalorians when they were in power. But obviously he takes that on as a down payment, and it is a pretty good down payment. He then goes over to a kind of Mandalorian safe house, his kind of den, as it were, where we see a couple of other Mandalorians, and there's a really cool Easter egg here. If you look in the background as he enters, you can see another Mandalorian who looks a lot like Boba Fett. I mean, this isn't confirmed, but his armor is pretty much just the same as far as I can see, and Boba Fett, he appears to die in Return of the Jedi when he goes into the Sarlacc pit, but in the kind of expanded canon, he escaped from that, and it looks like this show is hinting that that is still canon under Disney. So that is really cool. I know the Mandalorian isn't about Boba Fett, but it is really cool that we have a hint that he is still active. This bit, I was watching this with my friend, and he commented that it really reminded him of a video game, this moment. Basically, he goes to a safe house and kind of saves the game, as it were, and then he gives his Beskar steel in and gets an upgrade to his armor. It is really like a video game, like God of War, where you give the dwarves some ore and then they upgrade your axe. I thought that was really cool, and we see another Mandalorian, a kind of Mandalorian blacksmith who has a really cool helmet that kind of looks like a ancient Greek helmet to me. Mandalorians just have the best helmets. And as she's forging this new steel for him, he has some flashbacks. We see a child in kind of a war-torn area, and I assume that this is set during the Clone Wars. He then travels to the planet Arvala 7, to where the target's located, and he immediately gets attacked by these ferocious creatures called the Blurg, and he's saved by an old Ugnaught, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who is played and voiced by Nick Nolte. I have to say, one thing I really like about this series, in case you can't tell, I really enjoyed The Mandalorian, but one thing I really did appreciate is how they relied more on practical effects rather than CGI. I think that's one thing, one of the many complaints about the sequel films under the prequels under George Lucas was there was so much CGI in it. It really kind of nothing looked real. Whereas this, I love how they're doing as much practical effects as possible, and they look really good. I totally believe this Ugnaught was real, and his facial expressions looked really good. And basically, we get a kind of little mini story in the story here where he has to learn to ride one of these Blurg, because they're essential in reaching the bandit camp. To be honest, I don't really see why he needed a Blurg to go to the bandit camp. I don't see why he couldn't have just walked or taken a speeder. That was never really explained, but they say you have to ride a Blurg to get there. I appreciate he can't just fly in on his ship because everyone will see him coming. But yeah, I don't know why he had to ride a Blurg. I guess it was because Nick Nolte's character reminds him of his heritage, the fact that Mandalorians used to ride these giant beasts called mythosaurs, which were I'm not totally up on my Star Wars lore, but what I understand is they're these massive flying creatures. So we get a sense that Mandalorian heritage is very rich. They are a very tough people, and he has a lot to live up to. After arriving at the bandit camp, the Mandalorian sees a bounty hunter droid called IG-11, and this character is voiced by Taika Waititi. the director who did Thor Ragnarok and Hunt for the Wilder People. I really like him. He's got a great sense of humor, and he's directing the last episode of this series, I believe. And yeah, it was really cool to hear him in this. I love his voice. He's got a very good sense of humor. These bounty hunter droids, they're really tough, and they're great in a fight. They have kind of robotic precision for shooting, but they're very slow, and they lack kind of human intuition. He's very he just announces his presence, like, I'm a bounty hunter, I'm here to take this target, hand him in or you'll all die. And obviously that doesn't always work out. Anyway, he and the Mandalorian end up teaming up, despite the fact the Mandalorian doesn't generally like droids. There's this big fight. It felt very Western to me, quite gamey. Kind of reminded me of Red Dead Redemption. Clearly a lot of Western inspiration coming in here. And there's this big shootout. They seem trapped, but suddenly the Mandalorian jumps on this laser Gatling gun and just clears them out. It really felt like a video game. It was really cool. And it just looked great. All the blaster fire, the explosions. I really believed, the danger was there. And eventually they clear all the bandits out and have only to get their target. Upon reaching their target, they're surprised to find that this 50-year-old male is actually an alien infant who appears to be the same species that Yoda is, and he's cute as a button. But anyone who's seen the films will know that when they grow up, especially if they're Jedi, they can be extremely dangerous. Now, there's a lot of talking about the fact that we've discovered an alien young infant version of Yoda, basically. So this species, despite the fact being one of the most iconic species in Star Wars, is covered in secrecy, and apparently that was intentional by George Lucas. George Lucas, when he was in charge, never revealed very much about them, and we haven't learned much since. The only other character of this species we've ever seen was a female version that was in the background of some of the prequel films in the Jedi Council, but we really know nothing about them. Literally, I looked on Wikipedia, and the species is referred to as Yoda species. They don't even have their own name. As I said, we know very little about them, other than the fact they often tend to be very force sensitive as a species, and obviously this opens up a load of doors for the future of the Mandalorian and where this is going. I wonder if the contract was put on this infant because the Empire is worried that he's going to be force sensitive. Why does this doctor want him? Are they going to experiment on him? He was very clear about wanting him alive. What do they want with him? Do they just want him dead to prevent him from maybe becoming a powerful Jedi? Or is there something more to this? Could he be related in some way to Yoda? I really don't know. It's worth noting, in Star Wars, the Force seems to kind of have a will of its own, and it kind of interacts indirectly with characters and, kind of controls the flow of things slightly. I wonder if the Force is intervening here and, making this unlikely Mandalorian bounty hunter, putting him in the middle of something massive. It's really interesting. I really was not expecting that. I was like, wow, when we saw it. I can't wait to see how where we go from here. So IG-11 wants to just kill the young Yoda and finish the contract, and at the last minute the Mandalorian puts a bolt in IG-11's head and prevents him from killing young Yoda. I keep calling him young Yoda. I know he's not. Yoda's dead at this point, but that's the best name we have for him at the moment. So yeah, the Mandalorian saves his life, which kind of implies there's more going on here. Up until this point, the Mandalorian has been very professional. He completes his contracts, and it's possible, he's just keeping him alive because there's more of a reward for taking him in alive. But I do wonder if there's more to this, the way he looks at him. Are we going to see this series being the Mandalorian protecting this young Yoda from what remains of the Empire? Who knows? So yeah, the episode ends there, and it felt like it went really quickly to me. I was like, wait, what? It can't end there. Luckily, we've only got to wait one more day until the next episode comes out. I can't wait to watch it. If you can't tell, I really, really enjoyed this. As far as obviously we can't judge it fully yet until the season has completely finished its first season. But as an opening episode, I thought this was very, very strong. I would give this like a very high 8, maybe a 9 out of 10. Um, it really, I felt like, just did everything it needed to do. It didn't feel overly fancy or anything. It felt very grounded, gritty, realistic, and that's really what I was hoping for a Star Wars TV show. I don't need everything to be this massive, save the galaxy type thing. That works for the Star Wars films, but for a TV show, I'm happy to explore, other areas of Star Wars. More the kind of day-to-day stuff, as it were. And I thought this did it excellently. It didn't feel like there were any bells or whistles. It did what it wanted to do. It nailed it. I loved the prosthetics. The environment felt great. Felt very Star Wars, but at the same time, kind of a bit sort of run down and less polished as the stuff we see in the films. Because obviously, in the films where we're seeing empires and stuff, and everything's the highest quality, and whereas here we were seeing more the day-to-day life of the inhabitants of the galaxy, and I thought that was really cool. I loved how many like Easter eggs and references there were to previous Star Wars lore. I loved that Peace Day got mentioned. Those of you who know the holiday special, how bad that was, will have got a chuckle out of that. It was so funny seeing when he was walking to his safe house, seeing those creatures that Jabba had in his palace. They go like, yeah, ha, 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 being like roasted on a fire. It was like, what the hell? And I don't know, it was kind of implied that one of those might have been the creature on Jabba's barge. I suppose he got blown up in Return of the Jedi, but just so many callbacks and references to other stuff. But it was done in a way that didn't feel like they were just going like, "Ooh, remember so and so, remember the Millennium Falcon." It felt right, and not like they were just throwing things in your face. Yeah, I'm very excited for this series. Those of you who've watched my Star Wars videos will know I've been pretty down on Star Wars lately. I haven't enjoyed the new films very much, and I felt like Disney hasn't really produced much great Star Wars content. But I've got to say, The Mandalorian has turned that around for me, at least regarding The Mandalorian. The films. It remains to be seen how good The Rise of Skywalker will be, but yes, as far as the TV show goes, I really enjoyed The Mandalorian. I feel excited about Star Wars again, which is nice. It's nice to have some Star Wars content I enjoy, because despite what people say, I don't enjoy shitting on Star Wars. I really don't. So yeah, I'm really excited. I can't wait to watch the remaining episodes. I believe I'm correct in saying that a second series has already been greenlit, and I think is filming at the moment. So it looks like we're getting at least 2 seasons. Everyone else seems to have been very receptive to this. It's had great reviews, so I could see it going on for many more than 2 seasons. Yeah, I highly recommend The Mandalorian. If you like Star Wars in general, then you should absolutely check it out. If, like me, you felt a bit burnt by Star Wars lately, then I still recommend you check this out, because for me it really worked for me. I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see more of The Mandalorian. He's such a badass character. It's cool to have some Star Wars stories that aren't about Jedi and Sith and stuff. So yeah, I think this opening pilot gets. I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Couple of bits I didn't think were perfect. Nothing bad by any means. Just could have been a bit tighter maybe. But yeah, overall, I thought this was an incredibly strong debut, and I really look forward to seeing the next few episodes. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. That really helps my channel to grow. Click that bell thing. I still don't know what that does really, but I hear you should ask people to do it. And in the comments, please, I'd really like to know what you thought. If you've seen The Mandalorian, let me know. Did I miss any Easter eggs or anything? Yeah, let me know. I really want to talk about The Mandalorian. See you next time. Bye bye.